What's going on, everyone? So I woke up this morning and I had a few really awesome little announcements coming from FFG. The first thing is we actually have a first look at Set 5 Legends of the Force, which, by the way, I am immensely excited about, okay, tomorrow on a stream. And then we also have a week from that date, a competitive play check-in. And I got a few things to say about all these things. I want to say a big thank you to my patrons real quick over on Patreon. Thank you for supporting the channel, everyone. But let's first talk about this competitive play check-in. So a lot of people have been waiting for this, right? They mentioned they were going to do it at the end of March. Okay, sure. They didn't do it at the end of March. It's going to be close to the end of the March. I'm not really worried about it, okay? Pretty close. They said they're going to review the meta, and they are. So that's what they're going to do. Now, the question is, are they going to ban Django? Or are they going to come to some other conclusion? Remember, there's going to be another set of tournaments this weekend before that competitive play check-in. And that's probably why they're scheduling it for the 9th. If Django continues to be as insanely dominant as it has been, by the way, if you look at just the finishes and the overall win rates, we have Django sitting at, like, besides mirror matches. I think someone in my Patreon actually gave me this data, but with Django, without mirror matches between some of the tournaments, and at like a 57% match win rate, which is insanely high. We also had Quinlan at like 56, and then majority of the other decks were far below that. So we're seeing like not only insane meta breakdowns in terms of Django really dominate, we're seeing great finishes, and we're seeing great overall win rate from these decks. So clearly Django's in a good spot. But a lot of people are like, okay, what about this weekend? Like, maybe you could just build all the Django counter decks that people have been coming up with, which there is a good way to counter Django, which is playing a little bit more controlling, not relying on as many units, etc., etc., etc. There are some good cards that are specifically good against Django, some leaders that are specifically good against Django if you run with those specific combinations. The problem with this is that I don't know if it's actually strong enough, because what ends up happening usually is these decks are pretty bad. Like, you have to really neuter your deck in order to deal with Django against all the other matchups. So like Sabine, Han 1, it's really tough. And then Django pushes those other decks out of the meta to some degree. And so there's going to be an ideal world, Django gets dropped because all these counter decks show up, and then these other decks show up to counter the counter decks, and then you have like kind of a rock, paper, scissors meta. Okay, that could potentially happen. Generally with TCGs, though, what happens is everyone just runs the best deck. And even though you have a decently good matchup against Django with some of these counter decks, it's not enough to make up for the losses that you're going to sustain when people are not playing Django. Because Django is not like 80% of the meta. It's still only a quarter right now, and I say only lightly, because the other 75% you're going to have to deal with, even if you are playing a Django counter, and that can be really tough. So we'll see, but I don't know if it's really going to change. I would expect these tournaments to be pretty Django dominant as well, but I could be surprised, and we'll see with the ban announcement or the lack thereof on the 9th. But I do think FFG is going to be looking at these tournaments very closely to determine what they're going to be doing with Django. Next up, we've got the Legends of Force first look, and we have some spoilers to talk about today. With this little post here, some people took some screenshots of the little trailer that they had. We have a brand new couple of bases, it looks like. This one looks like a common, if I'm not mistaken. Like I think that's the common symbol, or maybe that's just the starter deck symbol. I'm not quite sure. I can't really see that. Let me know whatever everyone else's conclusion is. That might be the starter deck, or it might be a common. It doesn't look like a rare symbol to me. We got 20 HP Vigilance Space, Shadowed Undercity. When a friendly Force unit attacks, the Force is with you, so you get to create a Force token. So this is the kind of new mechanic. You have Force tokens, and then you spend the Force tokens by using the Force. And you can see that with the new Darth Maul, Leader in Aggression Villainy. It says, action, use the Force. Basically, you lose your Force token. You deal 1 damage to a unit and 1 damage to a different unit, which is pretty incredibly strong. Like, if you just imagine this combination, right? If you have a bunch of Force units, now, by the way, right now, it's hard to get that many Force units in a curve, but if you're playing a couple Force units and then every turn you're able to deal 1 to each of 2 units, like, that's incredibly strong with Darth Maul. Again, These are really, really preemptive spoilers. I don't know what the set looks like, if there's going to be a ton of force synergies. Obviously, that's my guess, but we don't know for sure. And we don't know how many force cards there are. But the thing that I'm thinking about is like force throw is in aggression colors, right? That is arguably the best force payoff that we have right now in terms of force units. So that's a really nice bonus for Darth Maul here. And overall, this force token looks like it's pretty reasonably easy to get based on what I'm seeing so far. This next one, this is the force token. It just says the force is with you. When you use the force, you remove this token from play. I'm not actually sure on the rules yet, whether or not you can stack the force tokens. I'm not quite sure if that's the case. Based on what I'm seeing is just the force is with you. You create your force token. Like the way it's worded makes me think that it's just one singular token and it's either you have it or you don't and you can't stack them up. That would be really, really awesome if you could. But just based on the wording here, my guess is that you could only have the singular force token and then you either have it or you don't. Because each one says you lose your force token, you gain your force token. So it just seems like there's just one singular entity and that is the force token. So that, obviously, if we could stack them, would be insane, right? Because if you had multiple force units, for example, as you're curving out, you can attack, get a force token, attack, get a force token. Then you can just constantly use Darth Maul's ability, and that just seems a little bit crazy. Also, by the way, this looks like a 5/6 deploy for 6. Interesting. Then we have the Qui-Gon Jinn, and this is a little bit easier to see the Darth Maul as well. So 6 to deploy, 5/6. Yep. And this is the other starter deck card. It looks like Qui-Gon versus Darth Maul. Absolutely love it, by the way. I'm surprised we haven't seen a Qui-Gon Jinn yet, but really, really cool. We have action, use the Force, lose your Force token, return a friendly non-leader unit to its owner's hand, play a non-villainy unit that costs, I'm going to say, less than the return unit, and you can play that from your hand for free. And I don't know, I think the other image had Qui-Gon as well. You could see the cost less than the return unit from your hand for free. And it is a 4/7 deploy for 6 from what I could see with Qui-Gon. So a little bit interesting. Basically, we're able to re-trigger when played abilities, right? You have to go down the curve a little bit, but that's okay because this can really do some cool stuff. Like if I'm just thinking about Qui-Gon, right? Imagine this with like Ahsoka or Cantina Bouncer or Bodhi, like double cunning. Like that is super strong. Imagine you go, turn 1, play whatever. Turn 2, you play Bodhi. Turn 3, you play, your Ahsoka, and then you bounce the Ahsoka, and then you play your Bodhi from hand, or something like that, right? Just like getting these when played triggers over and over and over again. Now, remember, it says return a friendly non-leader unit to its owner's hand. Play a non-villain unit that costs less than the return unit from your hand. So you'd have to have the other Bodhi in your hand. But there's just a lot of things you can do with that, with all the when plays, especially in cunning, which I know a lot of people are like, oh boy, another cunning leader, how fantastic. But that can be really, really cool. So really excited about that. And then we have a bunch of other units, really kind of hard to see, but it looks like we have Obi-Wan Kenobi, 3 costs, maybe like a 3/4 or 3/5, Force Jedi Republic in command. When you play a Force unit, this unit gains Sentinel. Okay, not super exciting, but it looks like it's going to be a command cunning deck, by the way. I'm sure that's why they put those cards in. We have Anakin Skywalker. He's a 1-cost cunning heroism. He doesn't even have stat line, really, because it's a 1, maybe like 3, like pretty weak stat line. This says hidden. This unit can't be attacked. I'm assuming that says if you play it this phase. So that's a new mechanic in hidden and shielded. So just like a 1-cost Force unit that could be relevant just to get the Force synergies going. We have Qui-Gon Jinn's Ether Sprite, I think, 5 resource, cutting heroism 3 something on attack. The next time you would use a when played ability this phase, you might play that ability again. And that's what I was saying with Qui-Gon. Like, can you imagine you get an attack with Qui-Gon Jinn's Ether Sprite and then you bounce it, for example, and then you play like Ahsoka and you get to double trigger Ahsoka. Like, that is incredibly strong. We have Lothcat, 2-cost ground unit in cunning. It's a 2, probably 3. When played, when defeated, you may exhaust a ground unit, I'm guessing is what that says. Also, potentially pretty powerful. Just exhausting with cunning is just super strong. Then we have Darth Mauls, we have Scimitar, something for, I can't really read it what it says. We have the Ravenous Rathtar, something a 5 toughness. Again, don't know what the cost. I think that might be a 3. I can't tell. We have Darth Maul's lightsaber, something +2. If attaching it is Darth Maul, you may attack for this attack. He gains overwhelm and can't attack bases, I'm guessing, is what it says. So you just kind of plow through a unit, which makes sense. It's very similar to the Maul leader that we already have. Then you have Darth Sidious. It's an 8 cost ground unit in Vigilance Villainy. It's something 8 toughness, restore 2. And then when he says when deployed, you may use the Force. If you do, defeat each non-Sith unit with 3 or less remaining HP, which seems pretty powerful, right? I don't think it's quite as powerful as Snoke, because Snoke just gets -2/-2 to everything, and it's just a static effect, so it shrinks your other big units. But this can do some good work, I think. Very interesting. It's hard to evaluate a lot of these cards when you're so early on in the set, but I'll say the overall theme of this just seems super cool, right? Like Qui-Gon, all about playing Force units, it seems, because there's gonna be a Force synergy, and then re-triggering your when played. That is the type of stuff I want to do with cunning. Like, that is the fun things to do with cunning. It's similar to Thrawn, how you're doing all these crazy things with Thrawn and you just get all these when defeated triggers. That's what Qui-Gon is doing, and I love it. The double cunning stuff where you're exhausting everything can usually be the thing that people hate, where it's like, oh, you're messing up my hand, you're messing up this, you're exhausting all my units, which Qui-Gon will probably do as well if you're going to play double cunning, but it at least does it in a more fun way than like double yellow Han, in my opinion. Darth Maul, also really cool. Seems like a Force-based deck, obviously, with his trigger. Didn't really get to see any of the early game units. I will say, just on the spread here, I'd much prefer the Qui-Gon deck, because a lot of this seems like very expensive stuff. And this stuff seems pretty early on in the game, and you can actually get some major value, which is really sweet. So I'm just a little bit more excited about Qui-Gon, I suppose. But I'm sure that we haven't seen the full list of Darth Maul, and it's just the cards that they chose. They're trying to pick what they view as the coolest cards, I suppose, to show off. I mean, they chose some good ones with Qui-Gon. Qui-Gon Jinn's Ether Sprite, I think, is a good one. Obi-Wan and Anakin, of course, are classics. Seeing Darth Sidious is pretty sweet, though, and same with the Darth Maul's lightsaber. And I'm sure we're going to get, like, Anakin's lightsaber, Qui-Gon's lightsaber, Obi-Wan's lightsaber. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if we got a bunch more lightsabers. I am very curious to see the rest of the set now, especially since I'm really hoping for a Revan, fingers crossed. But that is pretty much the spoilers, guys. I am really curious to hear what you all have to say about the early spoilers, as well as the ban announcement, if they're going to make one, or just the overall balance announcement next week. What do you think is going to be your prediction? Also, you could just say, hey, I have to see the next tournaments on the weekend to determine what my prediction would be, because that is also a consideration, right? If the tournaments are completely different and there's just not like this overwhelming Django dominance, then maybe we won't see a Django ban. But I guess I know a lot of people are hoping that we will see a Django ban, so we will see. Thanks for watching, everyone. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below, and I will see you all for a video soon.